This situation keeps getting crazier as we have some more details that have been revealed regarding behind the scenes information surrounding Mitch Marner and his time in Toronto that has huge implications going forward for Brad Living and his plans on this team and their future without Mitch Marner. We're going to break down these new details, discuss as well some comments from Ryan Reaves that directly called out not only the Leafs players, but their culture and their front office as well. And the situation surrounding Mitch Marner just took another wild turn as information continues to leak. But before we get into it all, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. Your guys' support has been absolutely unbelievable. You've been beasts, so thank you guys for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we had a video yesterday on the Mitch Marner situation. Of course, we had some comments about it from some of the players at the time and all those different things. Check that one out after this one if you haven't already. Some more details have come out now and emerged surrounding this situation. And it's both gets crazier. We had to go back and look at some stuff from a couple months ago once the season ended. So stay tuned till the end of this video. Let's dive right into it now. And I want to start with some comments that have came out from Ryan Reaves because it directly correlates to what this kind of the Mitch Marner sentiment was at the time within the locker rooms. You can see this here in his post-media availability. Ryan Reaves said there was no longer a fit in Toronto after everything had happened, including going on waivers. Of course, he thanked Brad Living for helping him find a new place to play, and he wants to chase the 1,000-game milestone. So he requested a trade out of Toronto, essentially, but I also think there was something to be said about the way that he was conducting business. He knew he wanted to be gone. However, he also went into some details about not only kind of what surprised him playing in Toronto, but also Marner things. But let's start with this here. He said the ups and downs of the fans in the playoffs, the arena could be rocking at one point and then dead silent at another, but passionate fans are going to be passionate fans. And he said what went wrong was that when things were really going wrong, all of a sudden this whole city wanted me out. I don't think you see that in other organizations. It's definitely different, but it's nothing too crazy. So Darius, he also dove into Mitch Marner, so we'll dive into in a minute here, but he's kind of speaking like he didn't necessarily, he's calling out the fans a little bit, but also backpedaling a bit. Some of the information here, especially surrounding Mitch Marner as we dive through, becomes very, very intriguing, and he even pointed to getting taken out of the lineup here. It's all kind of coming together, and it's very intriguing.
Some of the sentiment from some guys leaving the team, like Ryan Reaves and Mitch Marner, is, oh, it's really hard to play in Toronto. There's so much pressure, and we know how the Florida Panthers were trolling at the end of the year, like Brad Marchand as well. It's so hard to play in Toronto. Yeah, guys, it's so hard to play in a place where there's statues outside the arena for guys who've never won anything. Yeah, it's very, very hard to play here. Like, if you just try hard, put your head down, and give us some moments in the playoffs, fans will love you forever. I mean, look at the way the narrative has shifted with William Nylander for a majority of the fan base. I know there's still people out there that think that, and it's true, he could turn it on in certain moments, and he isn't that good defensively. All of those things are true, but look at the way that's kind of shifted, right? So I hate some of these comments that are coming out. I'm glad that Brad Living is going a little no nonsense now and shipping off any guys that think this way. I also wanted to bring up Matt Murray. He was so gracious and had like a goodbye, a tweet,
Yep.
and quote for the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, and said what an honor it was to play for the organization that he loved every moment. And then you have the other side of things where Ryan Reaves is saying, I know I'm an enforcer, and listen, I hope Ryan Reaves hits 1,000 games, right? I don't think he's a bad guy or anything like that, but like, you got to have an attitude that you want to go to war with all of these guys. And for him to come out and say that, I don't understand why I was taken out of the lineup. You don't, right? You know what I mean? Like, we could all see it, and we knew, even though he requested a trade, that he was going to get traded. He was making over $1 million, and at the end of the season wasn't getting into the lineup. He was going to get traded this offseason, whether he wanted to or not. So don't like a lot of these quotes that are coming out. I would prefer not to talk about Mitch Marner anymore, but unfortunately, some of these things are coming out and giving us some insight to what happened. And obviously, when you go back now and watch some of the games, some of the plays in the playoffs, and of course some of the interviews after games and after the season, things start to make a little bit more sense that this was happening for a while.
Yeah, and let's dive into some of because of course these comments all kind of correlate to the Mitch Marner comment, which he came out and said, I think they can be a little ruthless to him. I guess just because he's the hometown guy and sometimes fans want to point fingers. Mitch earned the right to go wherever he wants, and he's dedicated his whole career to Toronto. He deserved the contract that he got. Wish him the best here for sure. Now, again, it was seemingly was close to Mitch Marner now, according to after all this. And again, he called out, the team a little bit, especially with the comments about, the trust very early, the lack of trust very early in games. I mean, he was a bad hockey player for the Leafs, unfortunately, and that's just the way it is. And kind of to dive into the Marner situation, he basically painted Marner as a bit of a victim here, which I'm sure he was to some degrees. But at the same time, we think about what Matthews said and the passenger comment. See some of you guys in the comments saying that wasn't directly about Marner. That's still up in the air, but it seemed that specifically, Austin Matthews as well, with the way now, even if you go back and look at it again in the post-game press conference, especially William Nylander, seemed like they wanted him out of, not necessarily out of Toronto, but they wanted a change. And necessarily, those three guys, William Nylander, Matthews, and Marner, who were together for a very long time, like all their careers essentially, they kind of started to separate, and we started to see that towards the end. And it's interesting because guys like Ryan Reaves kind of gravitated towards Mitch Marner, at least as it pertains to once the offseason started and decisions started to get tough.
Yeah, I want to touch on the passengers comment again, too, because we brought it up in our last video that Austin Matthews, obviously, there was so much made of it after Game 7. He said there was too many passengers and you can't have passengers on the team in a Game 7. I saw a bunch of comments and people online saying that it couldn't have been about Mitch Marner because Mitch Marner said the same thing. Well, he didn't necessarily say the same thing. If you go back and watch it, a reporter brought up Matthews' comments to him, asked him how he thought about it, and he said passengers would be the right way to describe it. So I do actually think it was about Mitch Marner, maybe not specifically, maybe him and a couple other guys. But if you look at the entire playoffs as a whole, who was Austin Matthews calling out? We had big moments from Max Pacioretty, big moments from the entire defense corps, to be honest. Like every single player had a big moment, whether it was a goal, block shots, what have you. Was Austin Matthews calling out the fourth line? Like the optics of that as the captain to lose a Game 7 again in that fashion and call out your fourth line makes no sense. I don't think it was about him. I think it was about the guy who was clearly checked out mentally for at least a year at that point. So, that's just my thoughts on it. I'm just reading between the lines now at this point. We can speculate, I guess, for the whole summer. I'd rather not do that. And let's just leave it here with the Mitch Marner stuff and move on. He's not a Maple Leaf anymore. But, again, I think that's, if you go back and watch all that stuff, the puzzle starts to come together a little bit. And then again, just to bring it up one more time, Matt Murray, just the difference in, tone from players. Matt Murray was like, thank you to the organization. I wanted to be a Maple Leaf for my entire life. I had to move on. Unfortunately, he just signed with the Seattle Kraken, but I loved every moment as a Toronto Maple Leaf. And then the other side of things is it's too hard to play in Toronto and there's too much pressure. I hate it. There isn't too much pressure. Like there will probably, even if he never wins the Stanley Cup, be a statue for Austin Matthews. And he's almost the best goal scorer in Leafs history. And he's probably going to get it this coming season if he is healthy. So I think it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens next year. Obviously, people are, Matthews had a down year. It's going to be interesting to see how he bounces back without, of course, Mitch Marner. And you can see here, Jack Eichel said he can relate to Mitch Marner. I want to get a fresh start in Vegas. I can relate to a point to some of the things he's going through. I mean, it's weird. It's a weird dynamic that's happening. Players, obviously they're allowed to do that. Players are coming to Marner's side. Players are, calling out the Leafs a little bit. And the situation itself, it's not messy or anything like that, but it's getting very interesting, especially the complete 180 that went from, years and years ago, 8 years ago, whenever Mitch Marner's first season was, the future of this team beyond now. And now, of course, 10 years later, 8 years later, he's not even in the Toronto Maple Leafs uniform. So it'll be interesting. Let us know down below what your thoughts are. Lots of comments from Ryan Reaves, which is surprising. And, he got traded kind of out of nowhere, and he had a lot to say about some of the behind-the-scenes things. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.